Welcome to College Football Live. I'm Chris Cotter. I'm surrounded by Huskies. I mean, I got UW Huskies over here. I got UConn over here. Bob Diaco, head football coach at UConn, joining Ed Cunningham and Brock Hewitt and myself today. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, I've gotten these guys' opinions and everybody's opinion on the playoff here over the last couple months. I want your opinion since that's really topic of conversation. 4-team format, the way it is right now. You like that?
I'm good with it because you're talking about 5 and 6. If you went to 6, you'd be talking about 7 and 8. If you went to 8, you'd be talking about 9 and 10.
What about from a non-Power 5 school conference, though? I mean, now you're talking about the chance of having a great season, 12-0, 11-1, and maybe being on the outside looking in if it's still 4 teams.
Yeah, you know, I can definitely see that conversation, but we don't see ourselves as a non-power. I mean, I hear you, but we also have a lot of national championship trophies sitting in our Hall of Fame there.
Well, that brings up a very good point. You are a basketball school,
Exactly.
all right? Now, I mean, Kentucky
and
is...
field hockey, and soccer.
And lacrosse is getting better, right? Okay.
Exactly.
But, I mean, how much does that work into you building your program and the fact that you're a basketball school, like some of these others that we mentioned, and you've got to play off of that?
It's a huge piece because, and the conference is spread out over the country now. So now we can go into major metropolitan cities, and there's cachet with the brand. You can see the UConn Husky, you can see the UConn brand, and there's immediate recognition of what it is.
Real quick, because you coached at 1AA, and you guys made it into the playoffs, I think, 2000.
Yes, sir.
The Leathernecks.
The Leathernecks, that's right.
Western
That's
Illinois,
right.
yeah.
Macomb.
Guys I've talked to coach at that level, and they go through the grind of that playoff, which I think they're up to. Who knows how many teams are up to. What did that look like at the end of that season for those kids, physically?
Yeah, you're kind of stammered and staggering in and limping into the final show. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, you know, people want to talk about going from 4 to 8, and everyone I've talked to, Tommy Tuberville coached for a long time at 1AA,
yeah,
all of them are like, if you go to more than 4 teams, you are going to beat these kids to a
It's 24 now, I think. 16 teams play in the first round, 8 teams get by, and they take on those winners.
Absolutely, and we have finals. You know, you have finals. You're preparing for finals. The season is already 12, some 13, and then you're going to add 2 or 3 more games. It's hard.
I think you made a great case the other day with just your math. Yeah. I'm not a math major. I was a psych major. But
I know, speaking of finals, he was never really too concerned with finals, let's be honest.
But your numbers. I mean, when you look at snaps, we were talking about your old days at Iowa in the Big Ten, where you played how many snaps a game? 60 snaps?
And 11 regular season games. You know, that when we won a national championship at Washington, played 11 regular season games.
That's right.
And the Rose Bowl. Now, if you go to 8 teams, you're going to play 16 games.
Yep.
If you have a conference championship. There are 10 more snaps per game in college in the NFL. So now you're actually playing 18.
Speaking of the Rose Bowl, I know you've seen both these quarterbacks, and Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, play quite a bit this year. I mean, if you had to have one of those 2 quarterbacks in that game, I'm making you pick one because the other one's going to sit on the bench. He's not going to help you either.
I'm good on that. Honestly, and I think it's a big factor in the game and be a reason why, you know, based on what I would say in terms of the outcome, protecting the football. So, especially the season we just went through.
Defensive guy.
Defensive guy. Every single dollar I had
that he was going with Mario.
Ball security is critical. Oregon and its quarterback protects the football. Florida State and their quarterback do not. They win, and he wins, but Oregon protects the football. I would go with Oregon.
What do you think about that?
Well,
you got to pick one.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me because I've seen Winston enough and I've studied him enough to say, at times, he's the best college quarterback I've ever seen. Accuracy, game management, getting guys to rally and play, improvising, game management, all of those things, but it's not all of the time. And I think that's probably what you're alluding to. If I were a GM in an NFL team and I was okay with the off-the-field stuff with Jameis Winston, I'd pick him for the NFL, but I think for this game, I know where you're going.
Yeah, you know where I'm going because I live in Seattle, and I've watched a quarterback who can make plays and limit damage. In that decision-making, nobody ever talks about it. Yeah, he's a good decision-maker, that's fine, but how explosive a play can he make? He's a good decision-maker, but how accurate is he? Oh, he's a nice decision-maker, but he doesn't have all of this playmaking. No. When you have the playmaking and you have great 38-2 touchdown to interception ratio for Mariota, 24-17, and even last year, with all of the talent around Winston, he was still 4-1. I mean, it was 40-10. His decision-making at the next level will become much more.
But what about at the next level because of size, too? I mean, you've got to be a big quarterback like Jameis Winston to be able to deal with getting hit at the next level. I mean, we're even seeing Cam Newton getting beat up at his size. Marcus Mariota?
Marcus big enough. Marcus in person? Marcus in person is just about 6'5" and 220.
You know, I don't want to go against what I said either, but...
Don't go against it.
The other thing that comes into play, I think it's going to come into play in the game, is Florida State is very proficient in the red zone. In the high red and low red, they're one of the top teams in the country on defense and offense. And Oregon really, now they strike from outside the red zone, but they're really kind of abysmal in the red zone. And a lot of that production has to do with the quarterback.
All right, I made you choose a player. Now I'm going to make you choose a coach. We're going to the Sugar Bowl right now.
Oh,
this is a tough one, isn't it? Urban or Saban, you got to take one in a big game like the Sugar Bowl. Who do you want as your head coach?
Well,
you good
playing
with this?
against
Are you good with this one?
I don't like it. I don't like it. Okay. Playing against them both, they both, you know, beat our butts. We played Florida in the Sugar Bowl, and Coach Urban Meyer put it on us. We played in the national championship. Coach Saban's team in the national championship, they put it on us. So I've had a chance to see how they both prepare leading up to the game. I would say in this one, based on the work that Coach Meyer's going to have to do to manage the offense with a coordinator that's kind of spread out there
and
now.
a third-string quarterback.
Right.
I'm going to go with Coach Saban.
Defensive guy. See, he aligns with the defensive guy. Yeah. I'll just take Urban just because he's an offensive guy.
Yeah, I think both of these guys, as well as they recruit, as well as they develop, and just having a chance to be around them a little bit, they feel the pulse of their team in that moment. It never gets talked about nearly enough. Just the emotional, getting their team emotionally ramped up for that moment.
Well, what Ohio State did in the Big Ten championship game was unbelievably impressive, with the talk coming into that one, as hot as Wisconsin was defensively. I mean, as playing as well as anybody. Plus, they're a one-dimensional offense. You know what's coming, but no one's been able to stop them yet until Ohio State did.
You know, you're going to see this game is one of the more exciting ones that I'm looking forward to watching, because a lot of it's going to look like ping pong. You know, they have the 11th defense and 15th. They both have very talented offenses. Net punting, they both are at the top 10 in net punting. So you're going to see a lot of. They're both proficient in the red zone. What's going to come down to is Ohio State takes the ball away, has taken it away 11 more times than Alabama.
Oh, I didn't know it was that much of a difference.
It's a big disparity in terms of turnover margin as it relates to Ohio State and Alabama. And if they can get one more possession, Ohio State will win the game.
I still would. I was kidding about Meyer. In this game, I'm taking Saban and Kirby Smart. 3 weeks to prepare. You're a defensive coordinator. You've coordinated defense in a national championship game. You're always going to respect the opponent, but you're going against a third-string. Not that they're not going to prepare, but you're going against a third-string quarterback. How much would you do outside of your normal? Would you bring a bunch of new stuff for that kid? Would you try to, especially in the first quarter, scare him a little bit?
Yeah, and you know what? Coach Saban will tell you this, too, I'm sure. We created some things in that game, and I moved some players around, and although the systems made sense, and I had some guys free at the point of attack, they were not prepared to make the plays because they were out of position and they were doing jobs that they weren't used to doing. That was a mistake. I think if the players know what to do, they can get a line, they can communicate, and they can play fast and play hard, that gives the defense the best chance.
Well, they're all playing for the national championship trophy presented by Dr. Pepper, and that is one heavy piece of hardware right there. If you try to lift that thing up, the coach at the end of the game might be exhausted, might not be able to lift up that trophy. He'll hand it to one of those big, ugly guys up front to take care of the business.
They're not all ugly.
That's what they're all playing for. When they're at the end of a game like that, they're all going to be ugly. It's a balancing act. Coordinators leading their old teams into bowl games or heading over to their new teams. That's what Tom Herman and what the Buckeyes is having to do. And the question that will make Bob Diaco squirm. We follow up on our conversation regarding UAB and what's ailing college football next.
College Football Live is brought to you by Dr. Pepper, always one of a kind.
By former Ohio State offensive coordinator Tom Herman off to Houston to become their new head coach. But he'll stay on to guide the Buckeyes through the Sugar Bowl and then maybe the national championship game on January 12th. That's 2 days before the quiet period in recruiting ends. Bob Diaco is here with his UConn head football coach. And Bob, just a year ago, you were in a very similar situation, leaving Notre Dame, heading to UConn. What went into your decision-making process? You
know, I had an experience a year before where I had interviewed and for a few jobs, and one in particular was very excited about me and said, "Hey, we'd like to give you the job. Will you come right now?" And I said, "No, we're going to play in a national championship game. I can't do that." And I tried to pitch them on both, and they had to move on. So the year after, it was pretty clear. If I wanted this opportunity, I was going to need to take it.
That seems so, and we won't get into who the school is, but that seems so short-sighted because You talked about how the quiet period ends 2 days before Tom Herman gets to campus.
Yeah.
There is no quiet period when you're a coach at the national championship level. He's going to be a focus of all of the talk, and when he's calling high school coaches, making relationships back in Texas, he's going to be on TV. We're going to be talking about him on this show. How much more high profile for recruiting? It seems kind of short-sighted that they would do that.
How on earth do you do it? How do you do both jobs?
It's, you know,
how can you do it?
It's going to be a challenge. I don't know how else to say it. I wish him the best, and I'm happy for him, and he's a great guy and a great coach. There's so much that goes into preparing a unit to try to perform against a comparable foe and try to win a football game, that to think you're spread between two different, very challenging jobs is...
Well, to play a little devil's advocate, Jim McElwain did it. Right, went to Colorado State. He stayed on at Alabama. He won. Dan Mullen did it. He was with Urban at Florida as he went to Mississippi State. It is a great challenge. So I'm curious,
too, I think.
That school on the other side, and we think it is short-sighted, what were their reasons when they said, no, you got to come now? What were the demands? Why was that so time of the essence?
I think that recruiting becomes an issue and wanting to maximize that small little window in December. Like this year, it was only 1 week for us. We played on Saturday. We had 1 week, and then you know, the dead period began. So you want to maximize that recruiting window. It becomes a major pressure for your constituents and benefactors that are pushing that agenda.
But if it's the right guy, and we talked yesterday about this pendulum, right? This pendulum that seems to swing. Players coach, not a players coach, nice guy, bad guy. If it's the right guy, don't you think you would want to wait?
That seems very short-sighted. I have a question, though, about the recruiting, but also building a staff, because you're coming to a place. It's not like you're a head coach who has a staff and you're taking it with you. How difficult would that be for Tom as he goes through this process? You
know, I'm sure he's got a long list of guys that he's interested in. Some he'll be able to hire and some he won't. And that's what ends up happening. Your list kind of implodes as you start to talk about, get down to really nuts and bolts of, hey, move and come here, and here's what we're going to do.
You talk about building a staff, and one of the new rat races in college football is not just building a staff, but being able to pay a staff the kind of money to keep them around, keep them from going to other schools and other programs. And I'm going to just come flat out, right out, and ask you, are college coaches, head coaches and assistants paid too much money nowadays?
Oh, what a question. Wow. No. You know, I think back to my wife and I and our 2 children. We have 3 now, but we were eating bean sandwiches twice a week because I made $19,000 for a long time. And there's a lot of coaches out there serving and not thinking about money and grinding. And you get to a particular point and you make some money. Well, you know, at the same time, my oldest son is going to write his college essay on moving 11 times. So put a number on that.
Yeah.
Now, on the same token, and we talked about UAB having to close down shop with their football program here yesterday. And Ed, to your point, you seem to think that they're the first of several that may have to do this in the years to come.
Yeah, I do think. And Bob, I agree. I think the marketplace allows guys to make more money, and this is a free market. I think where schools are starting to say, how big is too big? How much money is too much money? And when you look at athletic departments, we read a report yesterday that play FBS, they're losing $25 million a year just on their athletic department. What other department on campus could put out that report and everyone say, oh, that's cool, the chemistry department lost $25 million this year? Granted, every department spends money. The income only comes from admissions, but I do think there is a tipping point. UConn, I think, is in a good spot. You guys are in a good conference. You have a great basketball team. You have great support. I don't think UConn is ever in that case, but I do think places like UAB and smaller places, I do think it's going to be a domino effect.
Yeah, and I hope that that's not true. I hope we can throw a lasso around it, because there's the greatest sport in the world is football, and college football is the best of the best. So I hope that that's not the case. But I can understand what you're saying, and I think that if you look at the greatest corporations in the world, and you look at their managers, and you look at their CEOs, and then you compare it to the work that a Nick Saban and an Urban Meyer have to do, they make a lot less money than those guys.
It's true.
There's also a lot of consolidation in corporate America, and you're not going to see the haves, swallowing up the have-nots. I mean, you certainly hope that isn't the case, right?
Am I feeling from you? Do you think these guys make too much?
No, I don't think they make too much. I'm with you. Free market should dictate it. The problem is, we love college football with 120 or 125 teams in FBS. We don't love it with 60 teams. We don't want the other teams to go away. We wanted all the teams to be a part of it.
Personally, I'd rather see them go away. I think there is a point in our sport where certain schools are going to have to say, we can no longer compete against Alabama every year. We can no longer compete at that level. To me, I think that
UConn would be one of those schools, though. But you would be a part of. I mean, you're not one of the Power 5 schools, even though you say because of the success of some of your other sports and whatnot, you've had the history there. But at the same time, you're not in Alabama's class. You're not in Texas's class. You're not there with USC right now.
We have had a small downturn. That it represents a small moment in time. It doesn't represent the traditions of this spectacular university and their football team. Not long ago, they were in a BCS bowl game, and we're going to turn this program back into a champion, and we've built a strong foundation and made some hard decisions to do that,
right.
and I understand the record there, but we've built it on a strong foundation, and we're going to get the program back to that point.
When that happens, I want field access. Even though based on this conversation, you probably won't grant it to me. Get him out of the stadium.
You've created so much bulletin board material.
All right, speaking of bulletin board material, motivation and bowl season. Who has it and who will suffer from lack of it? If you're playing ESPN's Bowl Mania, you're going to want to pay attention to our next segment coming up.
Vintage Performance is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. Always one of a kind.
Oh, let's take a look at this vintage performance brought to you by Dr. Pepper. We go back to the fat Ed Cunningham days.
Yes, sir. Wow.
Captain, too. Watch this play right here. Look at him take the nose tackle and just hold him. I mean, just throw him aside. That's a great play. You guys in the Rose Bowl, 91 season, 92 game on New Year's Day 1992, dominated Michigan. You win a share of the national title. Just take me back real quick on that one, because you guys had one of the best teams I can remember in a long time. You guys were great.
I think what was great, and we've all been around teams where everything seems to gel, and it's not like, it's respect, where there's just this bond between the coaches and the players. When we were driving to that game, I've never been around a group of more relaxed people. Don James, our coach, could not have been more straight arrow. He was joking around on the bus.
Really?
It was just that feeling of
that good.
And the plan was good.
Right.
It was put to bed. We all understood it. Everybody was healthy. It was really amazing.
Well, you guys had a lot of motivation. Obviously, a share of the national championship was there for the taking, and to win the Rose Bowl back in those days, even today. But back then, for a Pac-12 team, it was everything. Who are the least motivated teams of the 76 teams playing in bowl season, Brock? Who's the least motivated team in your mind going into this bowl season?
And it's strange because they're going to a fantastic venue. I mean, you think of the Capital One Orange Bowl in Miami and South Florida. But I think from a perspective of the opponent you play, and this is no slight against Georgia Tech. They're fantastic what Paul Johnson did. But you referenced this yesterday. Just preparing for weeks on end to play that system and the cut blocks and everything you get. And the boredom of your secondary, like, they run a curl route, right? And a go route for 3 weeks. They lose their D coordinator. Jeff Collins has left Mississippi State. He was the heartbeat of that defense and everything they did. Yeah, I'm going to be keeping close tabs on Mississippi State.
As far as preparing to play Georgia Tech, Paul Johnson's won only one bowl game there at Georgia Tech, and that was against USC in the Sun Bowl. And we know a lot of teams go to the Sun Bowl and have no
Sun Bowl history.
Yeah, exactly.
95, Iowa trashed his Washington team.
Keep that quiet.
Yeah, but also,
Speaking of least motivated, that team might have been the least motivated.
You don't want to be in El Paso for 14 days.
Well, the team you
I have
played.
some backstory someday I'll tell you on your Rose Bowl victory too. So I got stories.
Who do you think is least motivated coming into this season?
I'm going to go with Baylor. And playing Michigan State and that spectacular team and the things that Baylor hasn't done well, Michigan State really does well. That's going to be a hard matchup anyway.
Yeah.
And if they're a little jaded because they're not one of those four, because they're on the outside looking in at 5, it could be a long day.
I think Bryce Petty's going to get dinged. I think he's going to get pushed around quite a bit in that
Quickly,
game.
give me one for you.
Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame cannot wait for this season to be in the bank. With the way it slid at the end, they lose their middle linebacker. They have all those guys suspended. They didn't know what was going to happen. I think Notre Dame wants to get into the offseason.
Is there a team you're looking at after this bowl season that everyone's going to be saying, watch out for that team in 2015?
I'd like to say my Hawkeyes,
You're really pining for the Hawkeyes today.
But we played Boise State. And I love their tailback. He's one of the most productive backs in the country. And I think that they could be a conversation when this season's done.
What do you think?
Arkansas. Arkansas, Texas. And by the way, what a great bowl season. Have we said that enough?
Yeah.
I mean, all of these matchups. But I'm a big fan of what Brett's doing there. And to match up those two schools, just the logos, and to do it in Houston.
The old Southwest Conference, right? What do you got?
Tennessee Volunteers. 19 of 22 starters will be back next year on a team that's doing nothing but getting
Butch
better.
Jones has put together a couple of sweet recruiting classes. Now it's time for him to come to fruition out on the field. Well, Capital One Bowl season begins on Saturday. That's when I start getting bed sores from being on the couch so much, you know. The R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, Nevada, and Louisiana Lafayette, 11 o'clock on ESPN. Gildan New Mexico Bowl, Utah State UTEP, 2:20 on ESPN, then at 3:30 on ABC. Royal Purple Las Vegas Bowl, Colorado State in number 22, Utah. Tough season for the Huskies. We're going to talk to Coach Diaco about what he learned in his first season as head coach out there in Storrs.
College Football Live is brought to you by Dr. Pepper, always one of a kind, and Allstate, proud supporters of college football. Are you in good hands?
You kidding me with these two teams? Thursday night, 8 o'clock on ESPN. It's all part of the Journey to the Tourney presented by Sonic, Coach K and Duke and Jaleel Okafor and those great freshmen. Taking on the defending champs, UConn Huskies. Talk about great bowl games coming up. We've had some great early season college basketball games this year already. Here's another one tomorrow on ESPN.
I really wish we had someone from UConn here to talk about
that. Well, we do. We're not talking about basketball because UConn's a football school also.
Oh, no, you're always talking about basketball.
You know, say Brock is a 3-star recruit. I slighted you a little bit there. But he's also got offers from Syracuse, Virginia, Penn State. I mean, how do you sell him on UConn? How do you go into his living room and sell him on your school?
You know, we're talking about STEM. We're talking about being a top 20 public institution in the country again. We're talking about science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I know you're a psychology major, so it doesn't fit. I'd have to move on or fit it in. But we're talking about a resident life experience. About 80% of our student body lives on campus. So it's this great spirit, this great college, truly quintessential college experience.
Sold? You going to UConn?
I'm going. Let's go.
Great.
What did you learn about it?
The other thing, though, and I'm sure you can sell this, is, and kids like this, be a part of something.
Well, that's
right?
true.
You guys are down a little bit.
Absolutely.
You come in, you get to a bowl game. It's got to be something you're selling.
It is, and we have a nice collection of commitments right now, and they're just on fire right now to be a part of UConn.
Looking forward to seeing the years to come. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you so much, guys.